Hello, and welcome to episode 79 of the Sports Business Classroom Audio Experience with Andrew Schlecht. Welcome to the Sports Business Classroom Audio Experience. My name is Andrew Crooks, and I'll be your SBC alumni host for the next few episodes. I attended the SBC Immersive Program at the 2022 NBA Summer League, and I could not be more excited to be a part of this project moving forward. We already have some great guests lined up for you, and I am very excited to bring out this series of inspiring interviews that will help you on your path to a successful career in the sports industry. Thanks for tuning in, and now let the experience begin. For today's guest, we have Andrew Schlecht, producer and writer at The Athletic, and host of the Athletic NBA Show. Andrew graduated from Oklahoma State as a psychology and education major before pursuing his passion in teaching and helping to run a program for abused and neglected youth in Oklahoma. He began his journey in sports in 2012 when he and some friends started the Down to Dunk show, which he ultimately fell in love with and pushed him towards his career in sports. Nowadays, you'll find him writing about the Thunder, evaluating his favorite draft prospects, and hosting the Athletic NBA Show. In this episode, Andrew and I chop it up about his background, his day-to-day as a producer of a major media outlet, his love for the OKC Thunder, and the future of the NBA and scouting worlds. Without further ado, let's talk to the man himself, Andrew Schlecht. Hello and welcome to the SBC Audio Experience episode number 79. We are happy to have on Andrew Schlecht, the OKC writer for The Athletic and producer of the NBA Athletic Show. What's going on, my man? How are we doing today?
Hey, thanks for having me. Doing good.
Doing well. OKC having a very, very good start to their quote-unquote rebuilding year without Chet. You gotta have good vibes going right now.
Yeah, man. They're a fun bunch. Shea's improvement has obviously been the biggest story, but then you got Jalen Williams. Both of them have been playing really well. But yeah, they're making a little push here. They don't necessarily want to be out of the mix here. I think they'll probably end up on the outside looking into the play-in when it's all said and done. But this is kind of the gravy year for the Thunder, whether it's lottery or play-in. Like, it's all good for them right now.
Anything's just gravy at this point, right? It's the extra build the culture year, right? Get things right before the big leap. I love it. So we wanted to talk to you a lot. There's a lot of different fun avenues in your career. Obviously, what you're doing now is fantastic over at The Athletic. But I wanted to start by asking you a very simple question. I like to ask people, helps let us in as the listener. What first made you fall in love with the game of basketball?
Oh man, Shaquille O'Neal.
Love that.
Simplest of ways. So I was child of the late 80s, early 90s, started getting into basketball, and then just seeing Shaq in Orlando was just like, what is this? Like, who is this guy? Like, what sport is this? What's happening? And I just basically was the biggest Shaq fan since I was a little kid, and then just kind of followed him around from team to team until there was eventually a team in Oklahoma City. So, yeah.
R.I.P. to the Sonics, but good for you, right? Shaq was incredible. What a force of nature. I mean, have you watched the documentary yet?
I've seen about half of it. I haven't had enough time on my hands recently to watch the whole thing, but it's definitely like in my queue as we speak.
It's unbelievable. I highly, highly recommend. There's some stuff about him and the Sarge in there that's just unbelievable. Helps get you a peek behind the big fella.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go next. So you spent your college days down at Oklahoma State as a Cowboy.
True.
And if I have my math right, you caught the beginning of Dez, right? And then in his heyday, not Whedon, but Dez when he first took off.
Yeah.
I wanted to just start there. Were you doing any sports work in college? Were you locked in on the team, following the basketball side of things? What were you up to those days?
Yeah, man. I mean, I definitely was super into everything going on at Oklahoma State as a fan. as far as like covering like sports and everything, I did not get into that until after college. Honestly, I was a psych major and I did education as well.
Okay.
And so that was kind of the first part of my career path. But yeah, I mean, I got to watch Kevin Durant play against Mario Bogan in a triple overtime game in Stillwater, which was that was probably the highlight of it. The Cowboys did win that game against Texas. That was a big one. And then, yeah, I mean, both football and basketball are at pretty high heights at the time.
Well, you just missed out on Gerald, right? That was that whole catastrophe right around that time.
That was yeah, man. Like we should have had Gerald Green on that team. They had tons of 5-star guys on that squad. Like Mario Bogan had just joined the team, and he was just a force of nature. They had another 5-star guy. I can't think of his name, but he ended up not coming to the team because he got in legal trouble, and then the Gerald Green thing, and like the whole like the recruiting class, like a top 5 recruiting class, but then you had basically their 2 best players and
fell apart.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to go college. I was watching the PC game wrap up before we hopped on, and college is on the mind. March Madness.
Sure.
So leading in there, you mentioned you were an education major. I looked it up. I saw you were a teacher. I was actually a substitute teacher when I was in college back in Bridgeport. So before we get to the nitty gritty, I wanted to ask you if doing that made you, I don't want to say fall more in love with sports because we all know it starts at a young age, but did that put a fire in you to work harder at this, to know this is exactly what you wanted to do? Are there lessons along the way you learned? Because for me, you spend 8 hours in a day with some 7th graders. It really shows you what's important and what's not.
Yeah, I was a teacher for a decade and really enjoyed it. I was first a high school teacher. I taught psychology and sociology in high school, and that was fun. And I got my master's, and then I actually ran an education program for abused and neglected boys, and did that for it's like 7.5 years before the program got shut down due to funding. And then kind of all the while I was doing podcasting and just doing it for fun. Never really thought it would be a significant career path for me, and was just doing it because it was fun. And I loved the NBA and was just having fun doing it with my friends. And so, and I definitely grew a passion for podcasting, but didn't quite know like how it could become a career, because this was in 2012 that I started, and there weren't like clear paths. Like there weren't really any podcast networks even back then. It was just kind of like ESPN had a show and like CBS had a show, and there wasn't like these direct paths to it to becoming like an actual career. Everyone was just kind of figuring out how to do it at the time. And so I kind of, like a lot of people during that time, you just kind of figure it out.
Feel that. I was figuring out freshman algebra at the time, so yeah, I can relate a little bit. That's funny. Man, that's awesome. I didn't see anything about the program you ran. That's fantastic. My dad was a old high school coach in the poorest city in Rhode Island, so we relate. I definitely can understand there. So how did you get your start at the Athletic? If you said you started, you didn't see the career avenue, doing it for fun, fell in love, obviously had some real success, picked a good time to start as they go to the finals in 2012. I know I noticed that, but how did you get your start at the Athletic?
Oh man, it's definitely kind of like you have to go back, because we started a Thunder show called Down to Dunk years ago, and that was just like a fun fan show. Like there's thousands of them now. There's probably 50 Thunder fan shows now, and a lot of them are like, there's a lot of really good ones too. Like I don't mean to like denigrate it by calling it a fan show, because like a lot of those guys do really, really great work. But that's what we were doing. We were just a few friends just trying to make a podcast and just having fun with it. And in the process, I got to know a lot of the guys that cover the team well. Royce Young, who now works for the Thunder, had worked for ESPN. Fred Katz, who works for The Athletic now, was working for a little paper called the Norman Transcript here. I got to know him pretty well. Brett Dawson, who worked at the Oklahoman, who then worked at The Athletic. And then my buddy John Hamm, who is not the actor, but a local radio guy, who we just became friends through, covering the Thunder. So I got to know those guys, and we would do podcasts periodically. And so I actually just got together with those guys at the time. It was Royce, Fred Katz, and John Hamm. And I was just like, hey, why don't we start a show ourselves? And so we started a show, and we ended up putting it on Patreon, and we call it the OKC Dream Team. And we, instead of just trying to go about like trying to start a podcast just on iTunes or whatever, we want to see if we could just get people to pay for it. And so that we didn't have to go get ads, and it ended up working really well. And it actually caught the attention of the Thunder, and they like brought me in. They're like, who are you and why are you on this podcast with Royce? It's like basically like
that's awesome. They're like, how did we not know about you before?
Yeah. How did you get roped into this? And so I kind of started a relationship with, with the Thunder. And so I got credentialed and started going to games, and that was really fun. And through that, I gained some really good friendships with guys like Royce and Fred and Brett. And when I was looking to kind of shift my career, all those guys, Royce was still at ESPN at the time, but the head podcast, or the executive producer of NBA Audio at the time, was a guy named Jade Hoy, who used to work at ESPN and knew Royce really well, knew Fred, and knew Brett. And I was just in their ears, just like, hey, please tell Jade that I would like to have a job. Like, just let him know. Let the guy know. And they were, at the time, they were trying to fill out an entire podcast network of local shows. And they didn't want to start a new Oklahoma City show, and so they had asked if we would be like the Athletics official Oklahoma City Thunder show. And so that was in January of 2019. And so we, of course, were like, whoa, like, yeah, that'd be amazing. If we could be.
Yeah, sounds great. Yeah.
That's part of the Athletic. And then, so through that, I was just kind of a squeaky wheel, and I got to know Jade a little bit during that time, and it was just letting him know that, like, hey, I would love to work with you guys. Like, I feel like I would be a good fit, and got lots of different skills that I could apply to what you guys are doing. And then it was in February of 2020 that I got the call that they were actually going to hire a producer, and that they wanted to offer it to me. So that's how I kind of got in, was just through knowing people and being a squeaky wheel and letting people know what I wanted. So, yeah.
Never be afraid to ask for what you want. They might say yes, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's a great story. It's all about networking, right?
Yep.
So as a producer, I think one of the coolest parts of your job has got to be choosing and booking your guests and segments for the week. And I know you guys have a pretty set lineup at this point, but with so many talented people over there, I mean, I read Krasinski every day. I'm a D-Lo Hive member, so I was locked in to the Timberwolves. We've got Dufour. You've got analytical guys like Seth. I mean, Sam, you work with all the time. There's so many great people. How do you go about picking who gets to talk about which subjects, who works so well together? Kind of go into that a little bit.
Yeah, kind of the beauty of the Athletic NBA show right now is like they all have a different vibe to them. And so I don't so much worry about who talks about what. I just kind of let them talk about what they're passionate about. And so I just like, hey, what's catching your eye today? And if it happens to be like, if the same thing, if basically Tampering, which airs on Tuesday, wants to talk about the same thing the Basketball Buds does on Monday, I'm mostly okay with it, because they talk about it in such a different way. Like Basketball Buds
completely different perspectives. Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to be, and like Trevon Edwards is fantastic and has like really great insight. And he talks about it from a vastly different perspective than Sam Amick or Anthony Slater or Fred Katz do. And so that's honestly the beauty of that show, and why I think it really is one of the best shows out there is just that you get the perspective of so many people that have been around the league for so long and understand the league. I mean, we have David Aldridge on our network who
Incredible.
has
A legend.
Yeah, legend in the business, knows so much, has great perspective, is brutally honest at times. Marcus Thompson, who is hilarious and will just catch you in moments where you're just like, I never thought about it that way. Like he talked about Ja today in a way that I never thought about. And so those kind of things with our show it's just honestly, I am just honored to be any piece of it at all, and to be one of the producers for it is definitely an honor, just because like we just have so many people that are so good, like you said. And then as far as like booking guests, so I do a show on Saturdays called the Saturday Slam and Jam, and honestly, the way that we look for guests, so one of our segments is called the Wheel of Fandom.
Yep.
And so
you guys had you have Memphis right now, so I'm excited for this week's episode.
Yes. And so
but you had the Rockets. That was well done last week.
So we have that. And so kind of the way that I look for guests there, like obviously sometimes when you like, if you hit the Timberwolves, like John Krasinski is like, oh, of course, like that's the guy. But I also look at it as like an opportunity for like who does a podcast, or like who is writing right now that's like maybe under noticed or like shining through, that's younger, or you know, we kind of look for those people too. And I listen to
like
a lot.
The Pacers, you get like Caitlin Cooper, like something like that.
Caitlin
That'd
Cooper,
cool.
we've had Caitlin on. She's
great.
Obviously awesome.
Yeah.
I try to listen to fan podcasts during that week just to kind of see, one, what's the vibe of like, how are they feeling? And then two, like who's good? You know, if there's somebody that catches my ear, I'm like, hey, I'll call my co-host Alex, say, hey, we need to get this guy on. Like this guy's great. So that like is one way that we kind of go about it too, is like try to pull people up to our show too that are doing good work. You know, it's an opportunity that I would have loved to have when I was younger in our starting days with Down to Dunk. Like if somebody would have called me to be on a show like that, I would have kind of freaked out about it. And so we try to not just pick from like the best of the best, but like eventually like somebody's going to rise up that's going to be great. And we kind of want to
give people their shot. That's awesome.
Be first on those people too. Yeah, man.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we talked about booking guests, then we talked about getting those different perspectives. But as far as putting the teams together, I always think the biggest separator in podcasts is the chemistry between the hosts.
Yeah.
I think that's everything. That's why you see guys like PMT skyrocket, because of what those two have built. How do you put the pieces of the puzzle together? Because I think that being a good chef and combining the ingredients is a huge part of what you do.
Yeah, I think I was kind of lucky to be in the position that I'm in now, just because Jade Hoy was really good at that. And those of you who don't know, Jade was in a really bad accident around Thanksgiving. And so Jade, he's alive and he's doing okay, but he's not able to work. And so Jade was really good at that. And he put together a really good lineup of shows. And I feel like all of our shows have really good chemistry. Some of that can also be, like I think about Basketball Buds, and there are people within that show that maybe didn't have as loud of a voice or weren't as willing to talk at times. And there were times where I get on a phone call with guys, be like, hey, listen, like you have so much to offer this show, and I would love for you to just feel free to just inject yourself into this show more. And so some of it is not only like natural chemistry, but it's, you know, understanding what guys have to offer and then making sure that they are actually bringing it. Because it's one thing to know that you're putting the right people on the show, but it's like also who's bringing it. And if they're not bringing it, like, why not? And so kind of needling guys at times just to get them to bring the best out of themselves is also kind of a piece of that puzzle too.
You're like a good coach, right? If only Steve Nash had a little bit more of you, we might be looking at a different layout right now, right? I don't know if any chef could have figured out those ingredients, though, to be fair.
Yeah, no kidding.
Um, that's funny. So, keeping on topic, where is the Athletic going to be in 5 years? It came on the scene so quickly and has been
Mhm.
such a great resource for sports fans everywhere, people who want to get in the business, like you said, giving that spotlight to people who deserve it. As the media landscape kind of changes, what's next for you guys moving forward? Is it more feature pieces, behind the scenes stuff, analytic driven, draft? There's so many different routes.
Yeah, I think kind of the bread and butter is just the reporting that goes on at the Athletic, and just that our guys are boots on the ground, know their teams better than anybody else. Our national reporters are crazy plugged in. So I think most of it is going to be with reporting. Um, I'd like to see us get more involved with video in some way, because I do think that is a very viable path for like a media company, is
Mhm.
just become more involved with video or television in some way. And I don't know how the Athletic exactly does that, but I'd be shocked if that wasn't at least within the thought process of it. But I would say that most of it's going to revolve around the reporting and the feature pieces, and then using audio to kind of highlight those. I think is like the easiest thing to see, but my hope was that video would be more part of all of it.
Would you be thinking more like set show segments where it's like a PTI structure, or would it be almost like just here's a bubble, breaking news, quick reporting? You know,
I would love to have like
I don't mean to
actual.
put you on the spot, but
Yeah, no, I think like having actual shows would be great, and I think we have the talent for it. So, but we'll see how all that unfolds. All that is like way above my pay grade, though.
I think that would be awesome. All right, we'll change tones here. What are some things that you do away from work that help you in your day to day? You play some ball on your time away? Are you still involved with the youth? Um, Anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a dad, so I've got 3 young boys, and so we do play basketball a lot. I have a 10-year-old, and we play one-on-one when it's almost every single day that it's nice outside. So I like to do that. I do. So I'm still involved with some of the kids that I worked with years ago, and so helping those guys out too is a part of just kind of what I want to keep going with that program. So really involved with my church, and my wife and I teach a class every week together. So uh, that kind of stuff for sure.
Keep yourself as busy as possible.
Yeah.
Dad life, I've heard, is not as easy as it's cracked up to be.
No, no, no. Most people want to see the highlights. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so I want to get into a little bit of your stuff, your coverage. I think that you've found a great alleyway with the draft and the high level scouting stuff. What would you recommend for people looking to start that process? Maybe look at the game from a different lens. How would you go about that for a beginner?
Oh man, for a beginner, I mean, honestly, I would find the guys that are really good on YouTube and watch them. And like watch even like the no ceilings guys, I think do a really good job.
Mhm.
Um, they're guys that are just kind of trying stuff out, and brought a group of guys together that love the draft and watch a ton of tape. And I think that they've done a really good job. But read a lot, watch a lot. If you can get a hold of a Synergy account, like that's how I do it now, where you can just watch clips and then just like watch as much basketball as you can. If you hear about a prospect, go watch like 1 or 2 games of them, figure out what they're good at, figure out what they're not good at. And that's just a way to get started. Then find a way to create content, whether I'm going to write, I'm going to do a podcast, I'm going to do a video blog, whatever you want to do. Start a YouTube page. I mean, there's a lot of different avenues today. And my recommendation, if you're trying to do any of that, is like just start it. Like don't wait until you think you're good at it or whatever. Like just start it. Like you're guaranteed to not be good at the beginning.
At
Like
first,
that's just the way that it goes. And then you're gonna figure stuff out along the way. And so I just think like the main way to get yourself in is just like make sure that you're working on something. Make sure that you've got a project, that you have a podcast, that you have a YouTube channel. they're doing a Twitch stream or whatever it is, and just do it. Just go ahead and start it. If it's something that you think about or would like to do, just do it. Like, the truth is there's so much out there now. Like, it's just going to add to the noise, but then try to find a way to differentiate yourself and stay consistent. And, eventually things will start happening for you.
Like it. When you are scouting someone, when you're looking at like a guy like this year's draft, what are the go-to traits for you? What's the ones that stand out above all, the it factor, whatever you call it, when you're looking at a prospect and you just know this is it. This is a guy that I like. I can move him up my board. He's got the skill.
Yeah, I mean, I look at a lot of like ball handling and decision making stuff, especially with a lot of these college prospects. Is if you want to make it in the league today, those are two traits that I think will get you there. You have to be multi-skilled to make it in the NBA today. And so if you find guys that have multiple skills, like, start pushing them up your board. I mean, that's what happened with Jalen Williams last year. So he was in the second round for most of the season, most of the college season, and it just kind of kept moving up. He's a 6'6" guard, long arms, can handle, can pass, can move off the ball. And so if you can find guys like that, like I think about Anthony Black, who plays for Arkansas. Like, that dude is he's smooth with the ball, great decision maker, long arms, 6'7". Like, I just have a hard time thinking that guy won't make it just because
Do
I
you
think
question the jumper? I feel like that's the one big question with him, right?
There's a hitch in the jumper. It's not great, but he believes in it. I think part of it is also like this like psychological thing, which is really so hard to figure out. But you talk to people that are in and around Anthony Black, and like, he believes in his jumper. And so, like, that's good enough for me. Like, Josh Giddey believes in his jumper, and it's not great. And if guys are willing to work on it, if guys are willing to work on it and understand that it's got to be a part of it, I think that those guys will figure it out. It's the guys that are more one-dimensional that I think are tough. It's the guys that don't play defense. It's the guys that don't pass. Like, if you don't pass in this league, you better be an efficient scorer if you're going to make it. I don't care how talented you are. Like, you've got to be able to pass the ball a little bit. And so it's guys like that kind of scare me a bit.
Looking at you, Cam Thomas.
Cam Thomas right now can't get off the bench right now for the Nets.
Jock won't play him.
I know. Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, that dude is
issue right there.
Insanely talented. But that floor game is becoming more and more important every single season as the NBA just tends to evolve, and it's about positionless basketball, and it's about making decisions. And if you don't make quick decisions, boy, it's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough for you.
That actually leads me into my next question. So with all the movement, with all the changing guards of the NBA, the different things that have become important over the years, where do you see the league? Do you see it going back to the big man model like we see in Milwaukee, Denver, and Philly? Do you see a switchy, versatile like Boston, what Toronto's tried to do, spread out ISO ball like Luka and Harden? Or is it just let's get weird like Sam Presti seems to be doing, which is working, by the way? Put as much talent on the floor and see what sticks. Which way do you see basketball moving? I mean, it's constantly evolving, and now more than ever, it feels like.
Yeah, it's all about skill at this point. And I think part of the reason that the NBA offenses are getting so good is that like everybody on the court can score. Everybody on the court can do something. It's been an absolute joy of a season, and a lot of it is the talent level is just through the roof, man. Like, there aren't just like the Reggie Evans of the world don't exist anymore. Like, those guys don't play in the league anymore. Those guys don't make it because like Reggie Evans was basically a rebounder only, and he played a long career and made some money. He wouldn't make it in this league. You have to be able to do multiple things to make it, and there are a lot of guys that can do it. And that to me is where all this is headed. You look at Jabari Smith Jr., who's really struggled this year. Like, Jabari Smith has got to figure out a way to be able to make good passes and put the ball on the deck. If not, he may just end up being like a simple role player. And it's been a struggle for him because of that. And you look at Paolo, like Paolo's giant, and Paolo can make decisions. Paolo can score. Like he's been unbelievable. That to me is where the league is headed. And it's like Victor Wembanyama, who's 7'5", is going to come in the league and make quick decisions. He's going to come in the league and he's going to do everything. And that's kind of what's required of you. I mean, 10 years ago, if Alvin Thompson was coming to the league, no one would be worried about anything about him.
Nothing.
They would just say like, oh, this guy's going to be great. He's going to be a force. Everything's like, now it's like, well, his shot's a big issue. I mean, people complained about Russell Westbrook, but people didn't say like, oh, this is going to be a huge issue for Russell Westbrook. I feel like part of Russ's issues is that not only did his like athleticism decline some, but I think the league changed around him as well, where you kind of have to do everything. And if you don't, like it's going to be a struggle. So I kind of think that it's just the all around nature of the game, whether you're big or small or athletic or not. I just think it's about skill. Like if you're not skilled, boy, it's tough. I mean, you look up and down like the mock drafts today, like almost all those guys are like crazy skilled. You don't have like these one-dimensional guys toward the top anymore.
No, I think you're definitely right, and I think that this year is really interesting. Just kind of so many different avenues across where all the guys are coming from. Between obviously France with Wemby, you've got the G with Scoot, you've got overtime with the Thompson twins. So that leads me to my next question. As we've seen the prospects differentiate, they're all going all over the place, different avenues all across the world. How tough is it to scout individuals when the competition level's not the same, the offense isn't the same, their roles are inconsistent? Sometimes they're playing against guys 20 years older than them. How tough is it to scout, and what do you do to kind of make up for that staggering lack of competition in some cases?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, like OTE is like, dude, I don't know.
It's tough to watch. I like both of them. I think I'm a little more confident in Awusar at the moment with his jumper, but basketball's tough. Sorry,
basketball's weird. It's just like I don't know. It's just like watching social media, just like in front of your face. Like it's just a weird league, and Amon and Asar are obviously very talented, but it's like, man, like I just can't. I can't watch a lot. I mean, I've watched probably 3 of their games, and the shot is very concerning for both of them. But it's like college basketball is great. It's a great place to watch if you feel like obviously there's differences in the leagues, but overall, like you can get a pretty good feel for where these guys are at. And then watching, guys that like Rayon Rupert, who plays for the Breakers, that it becomes a little more challenging because, like you said, that he's playing with adults, and they're like trying to like win these leagues while also trying to develop. And so those leagues are really tough. And, there's a Ousmane Dieng who was on the Breakers last year, was drafted by the Thunder. You just get you get a smaller sample of these guys over there. And so you kind of have to dig a little deeper on them. And even like I didn't have a ton of Ousmane Dieng tape, but I just tried to talk to as many people as I could that kind of watched the Breakers or knew Dieng before he played for the Breakers, just to kind of get a feel for them. And so like it has to be, you have to have a feel for them beyond what they do in these other leagues, I think.
He's been killing it in the G. He was pretty good at Summer League too. I watched a lot of the Thunder games when we were out there.
He's played well lately, and he's acclimating. And you have to think about also you have to think about and know the journeys of a lot of these guys, because with a guy like Dieng, I mean, he's traveling from France to New Zealand, like completely new country. He's 18 years old. There's still all these COVID protocols. He was stuck in a hotel by himself for large portions of that season, and the first half of the season went terribly, but a lot of it was just like interpersonal stuff going on with him. And it's like, if you're just watching the games, you're missing a big part of the story. Like Ben Matherin's story is unbelievable. And part of who he is, basically was forced to go, not forced, but like encouraged to go play for this team in Mexico, as a teen, and really helped him get out of some trouble that he was getting into, and then went and played at Arizona and, blossomed there. Like, there's just these stories of these guys too that I think are really important as well. So I would just encourage people, like, watch the tape, yes, see how they play, figure out what they were like in high school, but then get to know their stories too, because it's kind of a big part of
Who
who
they
these
are,
guys are,
right?
and how they became the players they are.
It's all about context, right? To take it to a different sport, you look at a guy like Hertz, right? He grew up, coach's
Yeah.
son, everything the right way, and look at where he's flourished despite his quote unquote lack of talent.
Yeah.
So which prospect are you most looking forward to out of this year's class? Maybe a top 5 guy, a lottery guy, and flyer. I know you like Rupert. You've said that in the bats, right? He's a player.
Yeah, Rupert's really fun. It's like 6'7", 7'3" wingspan. He's
Like,
probably
like
going to
Jalen.
yeah, he's probably going to go in like the 8 to 15-ish range, I would guess, in the draft. A good athlete, really good defender, developing jumper. It's not bad. It's not broken in any way. I would be interested to see him in a larger role. He plays a pretty small role for the Breakers, but does play for them, which is not nothing. There's been guys that have gone there. Terrence Ferguson, who also played for the Thunder, played for a team in New Zealand, just didn't ever play. Like, couldn't get off the bench. And so just the fact that he's 18 and playing for them is a pretty big deal. Let's see. I mean, everybody loves Wembanyama, Scoot Henderson. Like, those guys are just ridiculous. I like Keontae George quite a bit at Baylor.
Do you? I'm a fan as well. I was disappointed to see them lose today. I like his skill set.
Yeah, he's a really interesting guard. I wish he was a little bigger, because I think that then it would be more clear that he's a top 5 guy, but you can see him kind of all over the place. I think Bassini's got him in the teens, and then I've seen other people have him in the top 6, but I like him a lot. I think he's just going to get buckets in the league. He's 19 years old.
A lot of room to grow.
Play with the ball in his hands, play off the ball. I think he's going to be able to shoot it really well. If everything works out, he could look a little bit like a Bradley Beal type player is what he kind of projects to be if everything goes right. So I'm a big fan of him as well. And then Anthony Black is like probably my favorite prospect in the draft outside of the top 2. I just think that dude he's gritty. He's 6'7", crazy long arms, good defender, great passer. I just really like the way that he plays. But yeah, as we mentioned earlier, the jumper is definitely a question, but he shoots it. He believes in it. So I'm a fan of him, definitely.
Like that. Might have to take the must bus to ride to the Final Four.
Yeah, man.
I like Arkansas. Are you too? I don't know.
I do like him. Yeah, he's played well more recently. He's kind of had a weird year with the injuries, but I think he can shoot it. I wish he was better with the ball in his hands more, but if he can find an offense where he can function more off ball, I think that would be really good for him. So if he can find like a big man to play off of, I think that he would work really well in the league. I just worry about him as just like your
lead facilitator. Yeah. I can understand that. Could you talk about the impact that NBA teams putting more of an emphasis on their G League development and their G League program, using the two-way contracts, oftentimes having their prospects hang out down there? We see guys like Usman, Johnny Davis has been down there for most of the year. Even these higher-end guys, these first-round lottery prospects, spending legitimate time down there trying to figure it out. How much of an impact have you seen that have on the OKC guys specifically, but across the league? I think it's a big resource that they're finally putting time and energy into.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, you have very limited minutes. It's a very competitive league. And if you are a good team, you're not going to be able to develop these guys sufficiently. We see it in Golden State, to be honest, is like they just haven't been able to develop their guys because they just don't have the time or energy to do it. And they've used their G League some, but it's still just really hard. And you've seen it in Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City's done it really well, and they have a G League program where they're running all the same stuff. I mean, it's the same from top to bottom. And the G League coaches are always communicating with Mark Daignault on what's going on. And Mark is watching G League tape all the time. He said he watched every minute of Usman in the G League. And so they're very close knit, and they use it to help guys gain confidence. I mean, like Alexa Pokashevsky is like a great example of that, is that they use the G League a ton for him. His first 2 seasons, just trying to get him on track and trying to see if they can make this actually work with him. And he played really well up until he broke his leg this year. And
yeah, he was turning it around. He really was playing some good ball.
Yeah, he's playing well. And the G League was a huge part of his story. Jang as well. Jang has had to play in the G League for a few stints, and he played really well. It helped him gain some confidence. He came back. And so I really like that. They've even developed a guy that they just signed to their roster, Lindy Waters.
He went off last night.
Yeah, he played well last night. 6'6", good shooter. Really interesting story too. Is like he's played at every single level of Oklahoma basketball. He played high school basketball in Oklahoma. He played at Oklahoma State. Then he went and played for a team called the Outlaws in Enid, which is just like this little team that's like semi-pro team. Then got called up to the Blue, and then from the Blue to a two-way, and then from a two-way to a standard contract. Pretty wild, but that was all from the Blue. And they brought in Lindy because they're like, hey, he can come in and complement the players that we're trying to develop in the G League, because he can shoot and he's pretty big. And they slowly figured out like, oh, we actually might have something in this guy. And so it just gives more opportunities for guys, honestly, that weren't there in the past to shine and then get a chance. And these two-way contracts are great for guys. So I mean, I think it's all good, and if you take advantage of it, like the Thunder have, then you're going to have a chance. I think the Raptors do a great job with it too. I think Denver does a good job. There's a lot of teams that use their G League a lot, and if you're able and willing to do it, and if your team is willing to put in the resources for it, then I think there's going to be fruit from it. And there's a lot of teams that have seen that.
It's like the Athletic, right? You give the good people a spotlight, and sometimes they'll surprise you.
That's right.
Right. Tie it all together. So continuing off that, I mean, OKC's clearly ahead of a lot of these other teams in the rebuild. I mean, on the court, it's really just them and Orlando, and off the court, nobody can even sniff what Sam's got cooking in his chamber of assets. So what has really separated them from the other rebuilds across the league? I mean, Sacramento's finally about to end this playoff streak. We see new articles every day about stuff in Houston going wrong. Is it the honesty? Is it the transparency? Is it that lockstep organizationally? What is it that separates OKC as far as the rebuild stories go?
Yeah, I mean they're very invested in culture, and like some people can roll their eyes at that kind of stuff, but they have built a culture from day one of what they want. And when they draft a player, that player fits the culture. They don't try to just mold a guy and be like, hey, we can take anybody and just bring them into the culture and it'll change them. Like, no, like either you're a Thunder player or you're not, and there's players, I think like Jonathan Kuminga was not ever going to be a Thunder player. That was just never going to happen. And it's not like Jonathan Kuminga is a bad person or anything, but he wouldn't have fit the Thunder culture.
Yep.
And so part of what they do is they create a culture within, and then they bring in guys that fit that culture. Like Jalen Williams both of them actually are just like both those guys are perfect for OKC. Like very unselfish, really pretty down to earth people when it comes to like professional basketball players. And I think that has mattered a ton. I think that they also have like a type as well as like the personality. They have a type of player that they want to select. Like you have to be able to make a decision with the basketball. And if you can't, you you don't get drafted by the Thunder, especially not in the first round. And so that's been a part of the early success too, is like you just plug these guys in and they can just jump right into what they're doing just because they are all ready. Like none of them are like really like quote unquote raw offensive players. And so that's been a part of it. I think Mark Daigneault's a huge part of what they're doing too. Like Mark has been fantastic as a coach. He empowers the players. They all really like him. They all really want to play for him. He demands that they play defense. If they don't play hard on defense, they don't play.
Seems like a good thing to demand, 50% of the game. So shocking, I know.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, that's been a part of it. I mean, they've been able to be a top half of the league defense and a lot of times top 10 defense this year without having any rim protection whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And some of that is like they have a ton of guys that are willing to take charges. They have a really swarming type of defense as well. I think that has really helped. And
long
then
arms across the board too. That helps.
Long arms, size for position is like another Thunder thing that if you like want to check the Thunder box in the draft, like size for position is another thing. And then obviously the biggest deal is just Shea being who he is.
First team, right? It's got to be.
He's unbelievable.
Him and Dame or him and Luka, one of them, one of the duos.
He's going to have a real legit chance to do it. And he's been amazing. Not only on the court, he's been unreal. I mean, you plug his numbers into StatHead, and the only names that'll pop up throughout the season is 87 Jordan, Wade, and LeBron. Like those are the only guys that pop up just because of the steals and blocks to go along with the scoring and assists and rebounds. I mean, it's just been crazy. And then just to see how he leads. I mean, he's almost too good to be true, honestly, with the way that he is off the court. I mean, he's very gracious with the media. He is really unselfish as a leader of these guys and doesn't put himself above anybody, even though he's getting all these accolades, which is it's really unusual. And maybe it's like a Canadian thing, honestly. Like it could be like a Canadian culture thing. Or like when have you met somebody from Canada that's not awesome? Like I've never met anybody from Canada that's not awesome.
That's a good point. That's a good. Do you want to use this real quick to tell Raptors fans everywhere that he's not going anywhere? He's staying. He's staying. Because every day I see a new tweet from Raptors Nation saying Shea's coming home, and I don't see it.
Hey, I don't blame him. I would want him to come home too. That dude is so good, but he's pretty locked in, and he even told us this was 2 nights ago that he's just feels really lucky to be at the forefront of this rebuild and to be one of the leaders of this rebuild. And so he's definitely bought into what Sam is doing and involved in the process and has understood it. He told me on media day that he signed a 5-year contract and that he understood that and also understands that they're not going to be losing for that much longer. And he believes in the process. So yeah, I mean, he's definitely the biggest thing. And you also have Josh Giddey's been great, and Jalen Williams has been awesome. And they've got Chet waiting in the wings, who's practicing more and more every day. And I don't know that he's doing 5-on-5 yet, but he's getting pretty close to that. Oh. And there's a lot of excitement.
Coming. It's coming to get it.
Yeah. And then you think about the draft picks in the future. I mean, they've got a lot coming at them, and the best is yet to come for the Thunder for sure.
7-1 unicorn waiting in the wings helps. I'm very, very excited about Chet. You had him number 1 pre-draft, right? I listened to you do the Void with KOC way back when.
Yeah.
Jabari, though. I do think he would be better in OKC, but
yeah, I feel bad for Jabari. I think he thought he was going 1, and I think that he probably just assumed he was going 2. Like the rumors about the Thunder promising him are just like flat out untrue. And so I honestly feel bad for him. And then to fall to 3, Houston's not a good situation for him. And
he needs guys who want to give him the ball and set him up for success. Almost like their backcourt.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even if he ended up on the Kings, I mean, that would have been better. Or if he ended up in Detroit with Cade, or just like some different situation.
Something.
Yeah, I mean, if it would have gone the way that people thought it would, where he would go number 1, I think even Orlando would be a better situation for him. And then I think Paolo would have really thrived in Houston just because they would have just given him the keys to the franchise and just said, "Hey, man, you can have everything you want,
forever. Please stay."
And he would have taken it. Yeah. So, yeah, I feel bad for Jabari, but yeah, Chet was number one on my board. I just think he's such a weird player in so many ways, but just finishes really well around the rim, can shoot, can pass, good rebounder, can push in transition, can step back, can do just about everything. And
he's the one thing they need left, right? You got the 3-and-D guy, you've got the great backcourt, you need the unicorn inside to protect the rim.
Yeah. And
shoot at the same time.
Yeah, the size is going to be an issue. I mean, he is crazy skinny. He's got the narrow shoulders, so there's going to be questions about that. And durability is going to be a question too, fair or unfair to him. But honestly, just being that skinny is going to cause people to ask you a lot of questions. So that's going to be part of it, and it's going to be really exciting to see him get back on the floor next year. It's going to be a lot of a lot of juice coming into next Thunder season for sure.
If you had your pick for the off season, what's your dream move? Because for me, I think it's OG. Slide that in for 2 of those picks. Have him be the 5th starter.
Oh man, I am probably the wrong person to ask this question to, because I don't think they're going to do anything.
No,
I think they're going to take whoever they get in the draft and maybe make some moves on the margins and let this kind of,
marinate.
This is like put the team in the crock pot and just set it and forget it, man. That's kind of where I think they're going to go with this.
It's the process, right?
For real, that's really what they want to do, man. I think that's where they're headed, and eventually there will be a time where they will look at a deal like you're talking about, but I think we're probably years, not months away from that.
Fair enough. All right, I know you got to get out of here soon. I got one more for you. I ask every guest because it's the never-ending debate in the NBA. Who's your GOAT?
Oh, man.
I know. Loaded question. But
yeah. I mean, it's got to be Jordan.
Thank you.
I mean, he was just a killer in the playoffs, and you just weren't going to beat him. He just was going to make sure that you weren't going to beat him. Just like the competitive fire from that dude. And like, I was also just like, I mean, I was a kid watching him. And so it's tough to overcome that. There's a lot that goes into it, but just the fact that he could, three-peat, walk away from the game, come back, do it again. It's just like, bro, like that's it. Like, yeah, I think it's MJ.
I love it. Like my mentor, the GOAT mentor, says, it's always MJ. Every stat, no matter what you're looking at, it always comes back to MJ. I'm a Kobe guy, but as long as it's not LeBron, it's cool with me. Jordan's the one. Oh man! All right, man. Well, thank you so much. I had such a great time talking to you. I'm so excited. Find myself watching the Thunder more often than the Lakers some nights as my own team. Oh, it's been better since the deadline.
Yeah, man. They're putting it together a little bit. I kind of have enjoyed watching some Lakers recently.
Vanderbilt will make anybody have a good time watching a game. He's diving all over the place, talking trash to Luka, making crazy behind-the-back saves. I love that guy. Can't get enough.
Yeah. Vando's a madman. I like that guy.
All right, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
What a story. Huge thank you to Andrew for giving us his time today and giving us a peek behind the curtain into his life as a producer at The Athletic and one of the OKC Thunder's biggest fans. I think my biggest takeaway was him talking about getting started in the industry and being ready to accept your failures at the beginning. Once you get started, things can only get better. I also thought that his story is a perfect example of, if you ask for something in life, make sure you're ready, because sometimes you just might get it. You can find this show's notes and links to everything from our conversation at sportsbusinessclassroom.com/podcast. And you can connect with Andrew via his social channels at Andrew K. Schlecht on Twitter and at Andrew.Schlecht on Instagram. Or you can listen to him like I do on the Athletics NBA show, Saturday Slam, on Spotify and Apple Music. Make sure you follow to see what's going on with him and all his friends at The Athletic. That'll do it for this week's episode, and I'll see you next time here on the Sports Business Classroom audio experience.